In the history of the world, 30 years ago isn't that long, but for humans, lots can happen in that span of time. The 90s truly was an era that was different to our own, and it feels so recent for some that you may not have realized it. 22 things 90s kids totally remember. 22. Walking with the music. Before the iPod, we had the Walkman. For kids nowadays who just use their phones for everything, carrying a separate device solely for music seems inconvenient. However, back in the 90s, the Walkman was the epitome of convenient because it beat just waiting for something good to come on the radio or carrying a boombox with you. You could even say that this Sony-invented device released in the late 70s was what started the solo workout music craze. The Walkman has been on the market since 1979 in cassette tape form, and it's something that stuck around until the early 2000s when MP3 players and iPods were then sold on the market. 21. The VHS. Ah yes, the video home system. Those analog tape cassettes that were bulky and needed rewinding after a watch. No pressing pause just to scroll back to the part you missed. Instead, you had to press rewind and find that sweet spot. Born out of Japan thanks to the JVC, VHS was so great that it beat out its rival Betamax, which was a smaller tape cassette that had slightly better video quality. Yet VHS won out. 20. That dial-up sound. Little kids have it so good nowadays. All they have to do is connect to the internet once and know the password and they're set. They don't know that moment in time, that anticipation where you've just gotten home and you're waiting for the computer to connect to the internet and you're hearing that sound, the dial-up modem. Funny enough, it seems the past is not completely lost. According to CNN, at least 2.1 million people in the US alone still use dial-up as recorded in 2015. 19. The size of the computers. Forget that MacBook Air or those small Chromebooks. Access to a computer or computer-like device wasn't so easy back then because computers were the size of a toaster oven and then some. Of course, some people opt to have huge, albeit flat screens, and really big PCs, but you won't see anything like this anymore. They were also always in that strange beige and gray color for some reason. 18. Not a PowerPoint. Your teacher used to have to hassle carting this thing in the room just so you can get an education. Remember those dry erase markers they would have to use and then smudge away at when they're trying to show you a math equation? Overhead projectors were the precursor to the PowerPoint, and anyone who grew up before the PowerPoint remember the overhead projector. Students used to have to sit there and wait for the teacher to be able to focus the slide. 17. The paper fortune. While anyone with a phone can now sneak a text message or a DM during class or any other setting, you used to have to write notes and fold them up all small and pretty. Likewise, because of the lack of portable technology, you had to do a lot of things with paper instead. Past time, people would make those paper fortunes, also comically referred to as the cootie catcher. This style of origami was made for children's games and was all the rage in classrooms. Kids may still use the cootie catcher for fun, but we know what it was like for those to be the epitome of your entertainment for the day. 16. Slap-on bracelets. They may look tacky, but tacky was fashionable for a few decades. The slap bracelets look like flat, wide sticks that actually are made of flexible stainless steel. To wear it, you slap it on your wrist and it wraps around it like so. Invented by Stuart Anders, a teacher from Wisconsin, it was originally called the slap wrap. It would then be banned at a few schools because it also seemed to cause injury. 15. Those excellent adventures. One disclaimer, the first installment of Bill and Ted came out in 1989, so it technically started out as an 80s thing. However, lots of people who were younger during the 90s still remember it all the same, especially since Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey came out in 1991. 14. The MASH game. Rewind to when we were talking about how people used paper for entertainment because you didn't have much else. True 90s kids, and perhaps one generation after, know all about the MASH game. MASH stood for mansion, apartment, shack, or street, sewer, or some undesirable shelter, and house. It was a way to playfully predict your future, essentially how rich you'll be and who you'll marry. You could write profession choices, your crushes, cars you might want, and any other category you want to add. 13. Where did Dunkaroos go? Once upon a time, there was a cookie that you could dunk in a small tub of icing. From the kitchens of Betty Crocker came Dunkaroos, tiny cookies that came in a blue package complete with colorful icing. First launched onto grocery store shelves in 1990, these cookies were represented by a cartoon kangaroo, one that changed over the years. They hit the height of their popularity during this decade and would go on to sell until 2012 before they were discontinued. 12. Popit. The commercials for the Popit were fast-paced and loud, the kind of environment you need to play a game like Popit. This audio game was a desire of kids everywhere during the 90s, patented by Dan Klitzner and then licensed by Hasbro in the mid-90s. 11. Video game consoles of the past. There is no denying that video games have come a long way from the original Atari to the big esports tournaments that happen in the present day. Gone are the days from when your video game just wasn't working and you had to remove the cartridge from your Super Nintendo and blow on it so that it will work. Nintendo released the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1990 in South Korea and Japan, and then in the United States by 1991. 10. All those CDs. You couldn't store all your music on one device or access it through the internet wherever you were back then. So what do you do when you want to listen to your favorite tunes and have a selection? You brought one of these things. A multi-disc package that came with a handle so that you could bring it everywhere. 9. Michael Jordan. Everyone still knows who Michael Jordan is. He hasn't and probably won't ever go into that much irrelevancy. That stuff doesn't usually happen when you're considered one of the greatest of all time. However, if you grew up during MJ's heyday, you remember seeing him everywhere. The world could not get enough of Michael Jordan. He started his NBA career in 1984, selected by and played for the Chicago Bulls until 1998. 8. Playing with milk caps. If you never collected or heard of Pogs, you're probably staring at this pile of circular cards wondering what in the world they are. Pogs, which stands for passion fruit, orange, and guava, were milk caps from the brand of juice that sold these flavors. In the 90s, collecting these caps would become a popular game. The name Pog, owned by the World Pog Federation. Theories say that this game first started in Maui, Hawaii, back all the way during the 1920s, though others think it originated from the Japanese card game known as Menko. During the childhood of many millennials and the young adult years of Gen Xers, Pogs were once a strange fad. Who plays with juice caps? But one that could not be avoided. 7. The floppy disk. If you went up to a young child in the modern day with a floppy disk and asked them what it was, many of them would probably not know how to answer, unless they're already teaching that stuff in history classes. We can now rely on USBs, but in the olden times, we had to use the floppy. You may have called it the diskette, but either way, they looked more or less like this plastic square. Some came in bigger sizes, originating from the mid-70s and used quite commonly until the late 2000s. There's no arguing that devices like USB flash sticks and portable external hard disk drives just have more capacity, rendering the floppy obsolete. 6. The Macarena. Some of you may not have realized that the Macarena isn't that old of a song. It was released in 1993 on the Los Del Rio album A Mi Me Gusta and would reach international popularity in the subsequent years. Back then, and sometimes even now, you'd be hard-pressed to find an event like a sports game, wedding, or party that didn't crank up the volume when this came on and have the DJ tell everyone to get to the dance floor. Billboard ranked it as number 7 on their all-time top 100 list in 2012 and would be their number 1 for the all-time Latin songs list. It probably helps that it has super easy dance moves that even the most uncoordinated person can follow. 5. Slime time. For some reason, slime was a big part of the 90s, with Nickelodeon in part to thank for that. Hey, we didn't have the social media platforms we have today. There's only so much bike riding and TV watching you could do. Speaking of Nickelodeon, they released a line of slime products starting in 1996, the first being green slime. Original GAC, manufactured in 1992, was reissued in 1994 as part of the Nickelodeon Deluxe gift set. Not only was it just cool to play with slime, but GAC in particular made fart noises, so of course the crowd went wild for it. 4. Gotta catch 'em all. When Pokemon first hit TV screens in 1997, the world was not ready for how popular these anime fantasy animals would be. Pokemon actually started out as a video game for the original Game Boy, turned into a card game, and then eventually became the animated series. The cards and games of course got even more popular with the release of the show. When it came to the card game, a lot of people would play, but just as many people were merely in it for the trading and collecting aspect of it. Pokemon cards got so popular amongst the youth that many schools banned bringing them to school. 3. Saturday morning cartoons. If you're an adult now and have no children, you probably didn't notice that Saturday morning cartoons don't really exist anymore. At least not in the way older audiences knew them before. Before, it used to be that youngsters in school would get up early for class Monday through Friday, and then still get up early on Saturdays to watch cartoons. That was a big staple of American TV. 2. More pocket animals. For those of you who weren't aware, Pokemon is the compound term for pocket monsters. It seems the idea of virtual animals was highly desired because the 90s was also the height of the days of the Tamagotchi. It came in the shape of a small, flat egg, a digital device that housed a digital pet. Created by Akihiro Yokoi and Aki Maita, Bandai released the toy in 1996, first in Japan, and then the rest of the world the next year. That's a lot of nostalgia. Before we get to number 1, let us know in the comments which of these you remember, and what on this list you wish were still around. Ready for number 1? Let's go. 1. Video stores. A la Clerks, the video store was once the place you could go to after school and chill with your friends at, or go to with your family. From PG movies to the most explicit films, you could find anything and everyone at the video store. Blockbuster was the major provider of movie and video game rentals, founded in 1985. In 2004, they had over 9,000 locations. It may surprise you, but they're still going even after being closed. As reported in 2018, there are now only 6 stores left, 5 of which are in Australia. If you liked that video, be sure to give us a thumbs up here at Wacky Universe. For more stuff like this, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Thank you so much for watching.